The Apostle Paul wrote that whenever you judge the other, it is yourself you are condemning. For you who judge, practice the same things. Let's see how that plays out in Nero's Rome. After a dinner with the worshippers of Mithras, we want to learn more about Armenia. And we travel to China, where Buddhism is finding its own path. In 54 AD, Emperor Claudius died at the age of 60. Perhaps due to his lifestyle, but it was rumored that Claudius, who was known for his love of mushrooms, had been poisoned by his wife, Empress Agrippina. After all, she had been working for years to promote her own son Nero. The new head of the Praetorian Guard, for instance, was one of her allies. Agrippina had married Emperor Claudius in 49 AD, despite the fact that he was her uncle, the brother of her father Germanicus. Claudius already had 2 children from a previous marriage, and Agrippina had a son from a previous marriage as well, named Nero. It took Agrippina 2 years to convince Claudius to adopt him. This gave Rome a new potential heir to the throne. Nero's stepbrother Britannicus remained very much in the picture though, no doubt to Agrippina's chagrin. But another 3 years later her wishes were granted, and 16-year-old Nero became the new emperor. Women were not allowed to hold official office, but it was no secret that Agrippina was the one in control. She eliminated several political rivals including Narcissus, who had been one of Claudia's most loyal freedmen, as well as Domitia Lepida, who was Nero's aunt and had raised him during his mother's exile. Apart from that, the first years of Nero's reign were fairly successful, as he was kept in line not just by his mother, but also by his tutor Seneca, together with the Praetorian prefect, a man named Afranius Barus. The provinces were at peace, and the authority and privileges of the Senate were restored to some extent, while the powers of tax collectors were restricted. Before long, however, Nero's relationship with his mother came under pressure. Pallas, for instance, was a freedman of Greek descent and a favorite of Agrippina. But Nero removed him from his post as secretary of the treasury. Agrippina was also not very happy with Nero's passion for Acti Claudia, one of Claudia's freed slaves. She may even have involved Nero's wife Octavia, daughter of Claudius and Messalina. Agrippina had arranged for Nero to marry Octavia in 53 AD, when she was only 13-year-old and Nero himself just 16. It was also rumored that Agrippina was scheming to support Britannicus. What is known for certain is that Britannicus died in 55 AD, only 14 years old. A year later, Agrippina was banished to her own villa. The power struggle was finally settled in 59 AD, when Nero had Agrippina assassinated. It was supposed to look like a shipping accident, but as so often, Nero's plan failed. Now everyone knew that he had his mother, the divine Agrippina Augusta, murdered. Then, in 62 AD, Nero finally dissolved his marriage with Octavia. Despite popular protests, Octavia was exiled to the island of Pandateria on charges of adultery, where she was eventually assassinated. The same year, Nero married Poppaea Sabina. When she suddenly died in 65 AD, it was Nero himself who became deeply distressed. A year later, after Nero remarried Statilia Messalina, he also married a 13-year-old boy named Sporus. This was a castrated slave child, who was said to closely resemble Poppaea. In 60 AD, a revolt broke out in Britannia. This rebellion was led by Boudica, queen of the Celtic tribe of the Iceni. Agreements had not been honored, and instead her daughters had been abused by the Romans. Londinium was already a lively center for trade and commerce. But Roman governor Suetonius was unable to defend the city against the onslaught and withdrew his forces. The city was then completely destroyed. Emperor Nero was ready to withdraw all his troops from Britain. But the battle that came next took place on terrain more favorable to the Romans. Even though the Celts were many more in number, they stood no chance against the well-armed and disciplined Romans. Still, Boudica has become immortal as a true British heroine. The biggest crisis of Nero's reign came in 64 AD with the Great Fire of Rome. Nero was in Pompeii at the time, but rushed to Rome to lead the battle against the fire. The inferno raged for a total of 10 days and destroyed most of the city. Nevertheless, the image of Nero playing the violin while Rome burned has become a metaphor for all failed rulers. But although he was known to be an artist, Nero never played the violin. Despite such a wide gap between narrative and reality, it remains information. At a minimum, it tells us something about people's opinions. Your judgment says as much about you as about the one you are judging, as St. Paul was preaching at the time. All this chatter could also reflect the acceleration in the spread of information that seems to define this era. Nero undertook the rebuilding of the city on a grand scale. The golden palace that he built for himself was beyond all measure. This may have given rise to the narrative that Nero had lit the fire himself, even if it was a fatal accident. The heavy taxes Nero imposed on Rome and the provinces for reconstruction probably contributed to this negative image. Moreover, he started debasing the currency by reducing its silver content from 100% to 90%. According to Roman historian Tacitus, Nero resorted to a conspiracy theory of his own and put the blame for the disastrous fire on the early Christians. After all, they do not accept the divinity of the imperial family, but have their own Son of God, albeit of more humble descent. They also reject Baal and declare the Torah, or Jewish law, to be the supreme authority. To restore his own, Nero launched a brutal persecution, although limited to the community of Christians in Rome itself. Besides his duties as emperor, Nero liked to perform as a popular artist who drew much applause. His cousin Caligula had a great love of music and theatre as well, but did not give performances for the public. That was unheard of, for a member of the upper class. Nero was a huge fan of the Greek epics, and in 67 AD, he went on a tour around Greece. Meanwhile, unrest broke out in the provinces. Yet he didn't visit any military camps, perhaps because competing in the Olympic Games demanded all his attention. In 65 AD, growing discontent among the elite had already led to a failed assassination plot. Seneca, who had fallen out of favor with Nero anyway, was among the accused and committed suicide. Finally, the Senate, in concert with the Praetorian Guard, declared Nero a public enemy. His death in 68 AD is also the end of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. After his death, a myth emerged that Nero would return as Nero Redivivus. To gain popular support, rebellious leaders repeatedly posed as a resurrected Nero. The infamous mark of the beast from Revelations is sometimes seen as a reference to Nero. During the 1st century, a somewhat mysterious cult named Mithraism became widespread. In many places, so-called Mithri have been found. These are spaces where its members gathered for a communal meal. Those members could have a variety of backgrounds, but the existing hierarchy of Roman society was largely kept intact through a system that involved 7 grades of initiation. Mithras himself is based on the ancient Zoroastrian god Mithra. Although the Roman version is quite different, depicting Mithras as slayer of a bull. Judging from the symbolism found in the Mithri, astrology must have played an important role as well. Unfortunately, no texts have survived. Under pressure from Christianity, Mithraism disappeared during the 4th century. Much of it has been preserved though. December 25th, for instance, is also the birthday of Mithras. In both Christianity and Mithraism, gatherings and a communal meal play an important role. Similar to the Greek god Apollo, Mithra was a sun god, and Sunday is his holy day. And last but not least, the 12 constellations of the zodiac have sometimes been linked to the 12 apostles. Following the trail of Mithraism, we find ourselves in the kingdom of Armenia, at a mountainous crossroads of east and west. Armenia had been part of the Persian Empire, until Alexander the Great defeated the Persians in the 4th century BC. From then on, Armenia was able to gain a more independent status and expand. Once the 1st century arrived, Armenia was effectively part of the Roman Empire. After all, control over the trade routes to the east was important to the Romans. Yet the influence of the Parthians remained strong, and in 58 AD, young Emperor Nero felt it would be a good idea to start a war against the Parthian Empire. After initial successes, the Romans suffered defeat in the Battle of Randeia, at the end of 62 AD. The following year, a diplomatic compromise was reached. Given its geographic location in between major empires, this back and forth has been a recurring pattern for Armenia to this day. At the same time, these exchanges fueled the development of a very rich cultural and religious tradition. In China, Emperor Ming of Han has ushered in the golden period of the Eastern Han dynasty. His father, Emperor Guangwu of Han, had restored the Han dynasty in 26 AD. Ming was not his father's first son though. That honor fell to Liu Qiong. But the marriage of his mother Guoshengtong with Emperor Guangwu had more to do with politics. Guangwu's first and only true love remained Yin Lihua, who was able to officially take over the position of empress from Guoshengtong in 41 AD. Liu Yang was their first son, and in 57 AD, it was he who became the new emperor under his new name, Ming of Han. In addition to internal struggles with his generals and princes, Emperor Ming had to deal with the Xiongnu as well. But in 65 AD, peace returned to this front. As a result, children of Xiongnu nobles could attend a Confucian school in the capital Luoyang. This institute was built in 66 AD by Emperor Ming, and would grow into China's first imperial university. Emperor Ming of Han is generally regarded as a capable and principled, but also very harsh ruler. He does earn some credit for treating his half-brothers and other family members fairly. And when he died in 75 AD, his will stipulated that no temple should be built for him. Instead, he wanted to be honored along with his mother Yin Lihua, the Empress Dowager Guanglie. This example was followed by later emperors, which resulted in considerable savings in temple construction. By way of the Silk Road, Buddhism had already arrived in China at least a century earlier. A certain affinity with Taoism is apparent. But less so with Confucianism, the official state philosophy of the Han Empire. Nevertheless, in 68 AD, the White Horse Temple was built in Luoyang. According to tradition, this is the first Buddhist temple in China. The Pali Canon is the oldest collection of texts, containing the teachings of the Buddha himself. It was compiled shortly after his death, sometime around 500 BC. A later edition is the Dhammapada, which means something like the path of universal law. A few quotes to conclude this episode.
Like a merchant with a small caravan but a lot of wealth avoids a dangerous road, and a man who loves life avoids a poison, one should avoid evil deeds. Let a man abandon anger, let him forsake pride, let him overcome all bondage. No sufferings befall the man who is not attached to name and form, and who calls nothing his own. Like an elephant in battle, enduring an arrow shot from a bow, I will endure false accusations. For the people have no principles. Tamed mules, noble horses and elephants with large tusks are excellent, but he who tames himself is better still. Because with these animals, no one reaches nirvana, where a well-disciplined man goes, by taming himself. The elephant called Dhanapalika, his temples running with sap and hard to control, doesn't eat anything when bound, and longs for the elephant forest. If a man is lazy and eats too much, if he's sleepy and rolls himself about like a hog fed on fodder, that fool is born again and again. Before, this mind of mine went wandering as it liked, as it wanted, as it pleased. But I will now hold it in check, as the elephant driver holds in the furious elephant with his goad. See you in the next decade.